Tonight is a long-awaited, very exciting show. Many people have been looking forward to this one for a long time because it has a long backstory. Tonight, we're going to be discussing who is former eBay insider. And I see I have a caller from Central Illinois. Good evening, Jerry.
Hi, Rich.
How are you doing this evening?
I'm just fine.
Well, while we wait for a former eBay insider to show, hopefully he'll be arriving, I'm open to some questions about him.
How did he first contact you, Rich?
In January 2014, about a month after I had started the first former eBay sellers group on Facebook, he began contacting me first through private messages there on Facebook, there in that group. Then, after I gave him my phone number, he began calling me on my cell phone. He wished at that time to remain anonymous, which I completely respected. He became my confidential source. Having worked high up at eBay, he would not permit tape recording of our conversations, but he allowed me to take voluminous note-taking. So I took many notes on yellow legal pads. The calls were approximately 1 hour in length. He revealed originally having been from Florida, having been active in corporate life at age 34, having been quite successful prior to eBay. He had worked in corporations before eBay. He saw what was happening at eBay while he was there, which influenced his decision to leave eBay. He couldn't stand what he was seeing, what was going on, what was being done to sellers, especially to the small and mid-sized sellers. A lot of this was because Bain Capital has a background of asset stripping. And in late 2007, early 2008, John Donahoe became CEO of eBay and began to implement asset stripping at eBay. And the targets, of course, were the small to mid-sized sellers. Now, it's sort of a part of a much bigger picture, of course, that goes beyond eBay. The wider picture has to do with a war on the middle class by the upper 1%. Ivy League folks raised and living in a bubble who have a feudal lord mentality, who are disconnected from the working people. I'm ready for some more questions.
I have noticed in the last, a week or so, they said that Walmart is beginning to sell off some stores, approximately 269 stores in, I believe, in the United States. Most of our shopping has kind of gone that way with Walmart. And, I was just kind of wondering, do you think that a lot of the e-commerce now is taking over or taking the place of Walmart, and Walmart is in big trouble?
As much as Walmart decimated small towns and cities nationwide, putting lots of small mom and pops out of business, they and Target did that. Basically, eBay became an alternative for small sellers and small mom and pops to open up until the shift, the deliberate corporate shift over to big box retailers within eBay. So it's interesting. There's an interesting parallel, an interesting analogy there. And I'm going to direct that question to Florida, Tampa Metro. Good evening, Dan Patrick, e-commerce professor. How are you this evening?
Fine, Rich. Well, I just a little late, about a minute late. I didn't get the whole question. What is the question here?
Cherry is asking if online selling, if online retail, online sales are impacting brick and mortars, and that maybe that's why 269 Walmart stores closed down. At least maybe that's part of it, which he was curious about that.
Well, you know, online has a lot of distinct advantages, especially during the holiday season. If you think about it, you avoid crowds. There's the taxation issues. If you find a good business that's not charging extreme amounts of shipping or no shipping at all, you can literally find quite a bit of a discount on the items that you're looking for online. So I think e-commerce is definitely taking a big bite out of brick and mortar department stores because of you think of the massive overhead to run one Walmart versus maybe one Walmart website. There's just no comparison. I mean, wouldn't you agree? I mean, what's it take to slap a website?
Yeah, I do agree. Back in the 70s, they built, about 20 miles from my town, they built a mall, and we're in basically rural Illinois. And, it was a thriving business, and businesses there for years and years and years. Well, over the last, 5, 6, 7 years, of course, now there's virtually no stores in the mall. And, that's, as far as I'm concerned, that was because of Walmart.
And I've seen a lot of malls bite the bullet in the last 20 years. Here in Florida, and I'm originally from Washington D.C. It's kind of a timely topic. I have a friend now that's doing rather well with a retail cigar shop, and he's from the same neck of the woods I am. And we were both talking about when they had built Landover Mall, and at the time in the 70s. The mall concept was relatively new, the indoor mall. There was shopping plazas where you had one store after another, but there was no covering. There was no inside food courts, no entertainment, inside the mall for the children. And then now all of a sudden you have these massive malls, and anchored on all four sides were a major department store. Like you had like maybe Sears on one end and J.C. Penney's on the other end. And on the west side you had Dillard's, and on the east side you had Macy's. And you still do. So these malls still are in operation to some extent, but they're definitely not doing the sort of volume that I think that they were before the online e-commerce came about. And I've seen several of them close down.
What kind of gets me is, like I said, I live in rural Illinois, so I'm downstate Illinois. I've read of malls up around Chicago, up in their suburbs and whatever, that, they're closing. And those are, stores that malls that probably have 90 to 100 stores in them, and they're closing up, and if you think that, if those malls can't make it, what chance do we have down here?
Yeah, it's not just malls. I worked for 7 years. I ran an e-commerce venture for a retail perfume outlet, and he had done very, very well in flea markets. And then he did so well, he bought his own strip mall, which was not a indoor, but it was an outdoor plaza of about 7 storefronts. And this way, his overhead was zero for his store, and he actually made profit from renting out the other 6 stores in the strip mall. And he went out of business 2 years ago because he couldn't compete with the major online perfume retailers. He could have possibly, but he didn't want to invest the money. He was near retirement. And I heard him tell, one associate and friend after another, why was he going out of business? And his stock answer was, I can't compete with the online, competition out there. I just don't have it, And he didn't want it, and he was 63, and, sometimes, people that had come up and done business one way for 20, 30 years, they're not it's very difficult for them to change gears, late in life, especially when they're near retirement. So I can understand where he was coming from when he decided to close his shop.
And I'd like to take a moment to welcome Northwest New York to the show. Is that you, Jeff Sleed?
Yeah, it is, Rich. How you doing?
Doing great, Jeff. How are you tonight?
Doing fine.
And
I heard the call. Must have started early. I thought it started at 8 Eastern. So.
Well, glad you called in. Glad you're here with us tonight. Terry, I think you had a couple more questions about former eBay insider.
Yeah. Did he ever reveal his true identity?
No, not to me, though I had a couple of different phone numbers on him. Now, it's interesting that you mentioned that because about a year later, not even a year later perhaps, there were two reporters who approached me, and both of them work for Bloomberg, and also from time to time they write for the Washington Post. The first one had quite a long conversation with me, and that was a reporter named John Hetchinger. Now, my understanding was that the report that he was going to write was going to be an expose on eBay and what eBay was doing. And he did talk to former eBay insider for an extended period of time. And he verified for me, yeah, this is the real deal. This guy was high up in corporate eBay. He told me some things that only someone would know who had been there. He gave me specific information about the department and some of the other people he worked and some of the type of things that were going on at eBay. And I assumed at the time that Hetchinger would do an expose. Well, a couple of weeks later, I got this call, and this story had been taken away from him. It had been handed over to Spencer Soper. So then Spencer calls me, and we have a nice, long conversation about eBay, going over some of the same material, and I think Spencer may also have talked to former eBay insider at the time. When the story came out a week later, it was a complete and total whitewash. So Dan, Jeff, Terry, I don't know if eBay got to these guys, if there was a payoff, if there was some intimidation. I don't know, but the final result, the final story that came out had absolutely nothing to do with the explosive material that we discussed. Dan, what's your theory on what may have happened there?
Well, one thing I wanted to know about the man that you're referring to is, has he ever divulged that eBay had any sort of agendas as far as concerning small sellers or any agendas at large concerning their sellers, period? I mean, was there ever anything divulged to you of significance as far as why are they behaving? From my experience, they just stopped behaving in common sense, logical manner.
Absolutely, he did deal with all that, and there are several different elements to all of that. It's a complex equation. It has to do with guardrail or trending, with the DSR system that was put into place, the detailed seller rating. Basically, a man named Mark Carges created an algorithm. He created artificial intelligence on eBay, a bot that had free reign to essentially destroy the small eBay sellers. It would target the small guys based on if they had a couple of low DSRs. Instantly, various penalizations would come into place. Various responses from eBay toward the small seller would be targeted by a couple of low DSRs. This would be things like seller limits, where suddenly maybe you were selling 1,000 items a month and a $10,000 limit or whatever. Suddenly that would be chopped down to where you could only list 100 items a month and sell $2,000 worth, whatever. There were instant 21-day holds placed on PayPal funds, and this would be triggered by low DSR. And all of this by the bot, by the algorithm that Carges designed and put into place there. In other words, it was an engineered grind that focused upon the small sellers. And the DSR thing was a twisted form of employee performance standards. That's what it was based on.
I just
yeah, go ahead.
it just doesn't seem in business, and it seems like the goal is to put every dime. I mean, no matter how big you are, and when you get to the size of eBay, every little guy adds up to millions of dollars. If you've got 20 million small sellers sending you $80 a month in fees for using your platform, that's quite a bit of money. If you just got 5 million small users, to purposely go out and try to create a reason to eliminate income, it's counterproductive to everything I've ever learned about business.
It's counterproductive, it's counterintuitive, but it's exactly what CEO John Donahoe introduced, and then there's several reasons why. For one thing, he didn't like the flea market atmosphere. He even in a speech referred to the small sellers as noise. He wanted to get eBay away from that antique flea market type atmosphere, type association, type connotation over to being a portal for big box retailers. His idea was, well, instead of having 100 little guys, let's have Levi's, Sears, JCPenney, Toys R Us. He wanted to become a portal for the big box retailers, and the attempt to shift over to that was done by these different policies that were introduced to eliminate the small sellers, and it worked with devastating results, including 15,000 small sellers suspended in one fell swoop on August 6, 2013. And there have been untold thousands of, and the chaos is rampant. The effect on human lives is rampant. Customer service reps were trained to call 911 in case of suicide attempts and heart attacks. There's even a documentary on the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge suicides, and it's called The Bridge. The documentary is, and there's one eBay seller that's featured in the documentary, and this guy just became depressed. He'd been cut after a long, successful career on eBay, and then suddenly he couldn't sell or list anymore, and he committed suicide. And the family did engage in an attempted lawsuit against eBay, and a lot of this can be Googled, and it's well documented. And he kept a diary or a journal, of what eBay was doing to him and the effect that it had on him. And I understand, of course, as is usually the case in these things, that eBay settled. Some substantial amount of funds was given to the family of that guy. But then, who knows how many people's lives were devastated, how many houses were lost, how many cars repossessed, how many light bills didn't get paid, all because the carpet was pulled out from under the small seller by eBay. And this happened on a massive scale over a period of several years.
And it's just like you said the word. It's just counterintuitive. I don't. I'm reading. Well, before I got into, my history is I was probably one of the first people to sell on eBay. I was in e-commerce almost the day that the National Science Foundation opened the door, trying to figure out ways to money. Then I eBay was like the Wild West back in like 1996, 97 era when they first opened up. You could even print a URL that absolutely had nothing related to the product you're selling in your description, and they didn't say anything about it. They didn't catch on to that for about I think 18 months to 2 years after they had been in the business, and then they said, "Look, you've got to stop." Like I used to put my flagship URL to one of my businesses and every one of the descriptions of my items, and then they said, "Look, that's no longer And I watched one thing after another become, no, that's no longer part of the rule. That's no longer part of the rules. That's no longer part of the rules. And then when we fast forward into this part of the millennium, it's like they're chasing out